G'day invaders and welcome to Sin Spacies, and for the very first time on the channel I've got a guest all the way from the UK, Top Hat Gaming Man.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, yeah, how are you doing today?
Doing awesome.
Very
I love
good.
that accent.
Yes, yours is pretty interesting too. It's got a nice twang to it.
People think I'm Kiwi. Anyway, moving right along. The reason for the video is because we thought we'd do a collab video to discuss my time working on the Sega Hotline. Now, for you youngins out there who don't know what a hotline is, before the internet and mobile phones and all that good stuff, people used to have to phone in on a hotline and ask for help on a game. The numbers were actually packaged in the games. This is my copy of Sonic 2 from way back. And you can see there that that was the number that you'd call when you get stuck. And some of the questions that they would ask were very random.
Yes, I'll just to interject there for a second. I was probably one of those annoying children who used to call these hotlines and ask the ridiculous questions, I must say.
Well, I would love to think that no question is ridiculous, but there were some. Like, where's the power switch? Come on, guy, you're not even trying. So, what questions did you have for the hotline when you called? Can you remember back that far?
Yeah, well, obviously there was no internet back then, so stuff became mythological because it would just be discussed in the playgrounds.
Okay,
so people would literally tell you lies, which you'd then believe, and then you'd phone up an adult and ask them questions about it, and say, that's bullshit, essentially.
Yep, and we can confirm that on the hotline.
Yeah. So someone's lied to you, basically.
So we actually had a database back then, green screen.
Okay, just So it was with a database. Basically, as a child, I must say, I always wanted to work for one of these hotlines because I just imagined basically a load of men like sitting in an office completing computer games and learning everything about them. Was that the case?
That was essentially... We had one guy, for example, playing Golden Axe Warrior, which was a huge Zelda ripoff. I didn't know it was a Zelda ripoff at the time because I never played or touched Zelda at that time. And he was mapping the whole game out. In fact, we'd have kids send in maps to us of Fantasy Star, Alex Kidd and all these other games. They would send in the art for us to use. But most of the stuff we were using was off the computer. We didn't have the big folder handbook like they sometimes used in Nintendo. You've seen recently some hint guidelines show their Bible. We never really had that. We just had it all on the computer. So.
But was it actually part of your work that you had to play games as well?
I was a professional video gamer for
that's
a couple
outrageous,
of years.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, I remember when I was a child, again, my parents, when I used to tell them I wanted to work for a hotline when I grew up, they'd say, "Don't be stupid, of course they don't actually play games there, it's just a call centre."
We played games.
You actually played games?
We played games.
Absolutely.
We
awesome.
would. I think it was we were much smaller. I've seen the Sega of America hotline footage, and they had hundreds working there. We were much smaller here in Australia than that, and we would have a team of 10. 2 people would be set to a game. They would play games, and the other guys would be manning the lines at the time.
Is there any ridiculous phone calls that stand out to you, would you say? Like any 1 or 2 moments you'd say, something you could tell us about?
I'm getting on the old side. It is a little fuzzy, but one in particular that does stand out was what I called a mother and son team from Canberra. They were phoning up every single step of the way for Fantasy Star. And basically, we finished the game for them. They were just doing what we told them to do.
would that have cost them a lot of money to make those sort of phone calls?
It was STD phone calls, standard trunk dialing, not what you think STD means. Oh, you're innocent. That's right. Sorry, Top Hat Man. So they would be calling in long distance call. It was not that we were charging it. That came later. That's when I left. But yeah, they were phoning up every step of the way. When they finally finished it, they were clapping and cheering, and I was just like, thank God for that. Now we won't hear from them. Oh, we're going to be buying Fantasy Star 2. We can't wait. And I'm like, oh, thank God that game comes with a hint book.
Thinking about it, it must have been quite hard referring to a database, because I'm assuming some of the questions would have been quite tailored, I suppose. Do you understand what I mean?
For the most part, the calls were pretty standard. The common issues with certain games, we knew what they were going to say.
So people would ask the same questions over and over.
Alex Kidd by far was the definitive question that we got. In fact, there was one or 2 times where I would just answer it. Let me guess, you're stuck in a room and there's a ghost that's killing you, right? Sun, star, moon, fish, star, moon, waves, fish, star, fish, or something along those lines. It's been a few years, but it's something along that lines. And that was what they wanted, was that code.
The same code, just
Yeah,
over and
yeah,
over again.
Yeah.
So I assume that as games were released, everyone would be phoning up about the same games all the time, which must have made it a little bit easier as well.
It took the difficulty out to a degree, yes. But there were some times when you would have to help them on the most simplest things, like beating the first boss in Sonic the Hedgehog. Like, you and I can do that in a cinch, but there are some people that just couldn't comprehend the fact that you had to jump up and hit the Robotnik guy. That was a bit too hard for him.
Did also what did you face challenge? Would you say if someone phoned up about a really obscure game? Was there like games that there was not much information about on your databases?
See, I had a good wrap on most of the Mega Drive stuff that was out at the time in Master System, and as we had open access, we could actually take home and borrow the games from the hotline overnight, which was a little cool perk that we had back then. There wasn't really that many games that they would call up and we'd get stuck on, to be quite honest.
So anyway, how did you land up with getting essentially the best job everyone bloody wanted in that time?
And I would still love in 2017. I wrote my own Sega magazine, the Sega Times, and I would send copies of that to Sega. And actually, I was on the phone constantly to the main operations manager of Sega, and I think he just felt pity for a kid calling up. He kind of found it cute that this guy was so fascinated or interested in the gaming industry. And after a while, they essentially asked me to come in, and it was a shoo-in startup job. My first job leaving high school.
Oh wow, that's a good fun job, isn't it? You
Yeah.
couldn't ask so much more than that. So what actually ended the Sega Hotline? When was its downfall?
So they were going to move from the free calls, or the standard calls, to a what we call here in Australia 0055 back then, where you would be charged per minute, and that's when things started to get a little bit commercial and a bit you got to help this guy real quick, otherwise he's paying for it and he's going to start yelling at you. I think that's kind of what got me out of it.
Yeah, using the hotline myself as a child, I do not remember not paying copious amounts of money for, or paying copious amounts of my parents' money for them.
Yeah, not your money, of course.
No, of course not. No. I wouldn't waste money on such a thing. No.
Top Hat, you've been calling up the Sega Hotline again. Come on.
Yeah, sometimes the phone bill was like, "What's all these bloody 0800 numbers?" And
was it those type of numbers? No.
None of that.
So yeah, I can't help but want to work back in that industry, but we all know Google killed that, didn't they?
It did, yes. Bloody internet ruins everything for retro gamers.
Yeah.
Like bloody smartphones, they're bloody annoying. Bloody smartphones.
We're getting dumber, seriously.
But since these annoying things have existed, retro gaming has become so hard because now you go to a bloody boot sale, everyone knows the price of everything at the click of a finger, so there's just nothing there anymore.
They know the exorbitant price. They don't know what
exactly.
It's really worth.
Well, yeah, of course not. No. They're bloody idiots, all of them. So obviously in the 90s, people my age in the playground, there was a big rivalry between fans of Sega and fans of Nintendo. What was that like working for Sega at the time? What was it as an employee, would you say?
I couldn't resist the urge to prank call Nintendo.
Really?
Yeah, and they wouldn't be onto us because there was no caller ID back then. So I'd call up pretending to be a kid saying, "Excuse me, when are you going to be getting Sonic on the Nintendo?" And I say, "I'm sorry, but that's not one of our games." And then I'd bawl my eyes out, go, "I want to play Sonic on my Nintendo." It was awesome.
That's amazing, isn't it? So the rivalry went deeper than the bloody playgrounds.
I don't think we got prank calls from that. They were too straight up. It was Mattel that was distributing Nintendo products here in Australia at the time. I think they were very corporate, like we were nothing.
So it was literally like the image they portrayed, where Nintendo really conservative in their values.
They're very conservative, yeah.
At the time, Sega was trying to push more of a bit more of a teen vibe, I'd say.
There was no rules really. We would turn up to work in Adidas pants and nothing corporate like at all. We had a company in Australia at the time which was doing big called Mambo, producing really cool shirts. We had Sega shirts specifically made by them. They were really like cool. That's how we went to work, in trackies and shirts, and it was an awesome environment to work in. And we were stuck down in our little lair, whereas the corporate guys for Aussie someone's got to do the work. They were upstairs and they left us alone in our little hotline hub. It was pretty cool. It was just like a boys' club. There was girls. Sorry, what am I saying? That's so wrong. There were a few girls that were working there as well too, on the hotline, I should say. By the end of it, they knew their stuff.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So, besides Alex Kidd, what would you say game you got called the most about?
Well, a game that we didn't have actually, which was kind of sad until later, and by the time it came out, the whole hype had died down, and that was Street Fighter 2. We would constantly get people calling up saying, when's it coming out? And it was really a struggle to have to tell them, we don't know. Meanwhile, I would be having my Super Nintendo in the Sega Hotline while playing this. So as I'm playing Street Fighter, and they're asking me, when's it coming out? Oh, I don't know. Why don't you just buy a Nintendo? Oops, sorry.
And was that okay? Was that Nintendo's allowed on the premises, or was that bloody like drinking alcohol in a library?
Well, the rest of the hotline weren't as hardcore Sega fan as I was. I was the fanboy. I learnt later not to be a fanboy thanks to the demise of Sega. That's taught me a big lesson in life. But I'd have the CEO of the Sega Distributing Company of Australia, bloody Cuckoo Clark. I'd have the CEO himself walk past, seeing me playing Street Fighter. He didn't care. He probably didn't even know what it was.
He probably wouldn't have known the bloody difference. These bloody corporates in their suits. None of them know what they're really doing. They just take the money, don't they?
It did feel kind of like dirty doing something we shouldn't be doing, but that's what made it cool.
It is. I agree. Yeah. It's what's the word? Very punk. Very punk.
Yeah, very rogue. Yeah.
Anyway, very nice talking to you about the Sega Hotline today, I must say. I have learnt a lot, and it appears that my childhood self appears to have been right about a lot of my assumptions about these hotlines.
We were having a ball. You would often, when call in, hear people laughing and crapping on in the background because it was just a big party. That's
awesome.
Yeah, it was really awesome. I do miss it, but we've got Google now. Yay.
Yes, so
We've
yes.
got YouTubers like us. What am I saying? We've got YouTube. That's our new hotline.
So rest in peace, hotlines. Long live YouTube.
Yeah. Anyway, my name's been Brian, and I've been gaming since Spaceys.
And I'm the Top Hat Gaming Man. Yeah.
Cheerio! Isn't that your line?